So you're wearing your Steelers gear. You're decked on out.
I
I
am.
assume you're wearing your Antonio Brown jersey to
Yeah.
show some support. He needs all the allies he can get right now.
That man needs a lot of help, that's for sure. No, yeah, that has been firmly hanged up in the closet, and no sign of getting that on.
No goodwill donation.
Soon.
No, then just take it to Goodwill and say, "Here you go."
Yeah, maybe. But then I don't want them to just have a piece of cloth that won't sell.
That's true.
Quite
Take it to
some
Salvation
time.
Army. The Salvation Army instead.
Yeah,
maybe. Put
maybe
the burden on. Put the burden on the ones doing the most good.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
I didn't mean to start with my personal shots at Salvation Army. I'm not a Salvation Army guy.
Hey, but, you and me both, man. Definitely.
Well, listen, it's the holidays.
It's also hard to find one that's super reliable. Period. Not just Salvation Army, but all of them. Really.
Listen, it's the holidays, and they rub in the face that they're doing the most good. All right, hey, if anyone's doing good, it's good, right? Why are we judging?
Why is it saintly competition here?
Yeah, listen, you ring the bell in my face, say you do the most good. I don't know. I'm a Toys for Tots guy. I like to get children, make sure they have toys for Christmas. Sorry, Salvation Army. I think that's doing the most good. I didn't mean for this to turn into Mark's Salvation Army rant, but trust me, you pour me a bullet bourbon on the rocks, and I can rant about Salvation Army until the cows come home. I've also been watching a lot of Yellowstone, so that's where my brain is at with those references.
Oh yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, what a reference to open things up with, but that was that whole Antonio Brown sequence. I'm sure everyone listening by now has seen kind of how that thing played off, but basically he or played out, I should say, basically, taking his jersey off and his shirt and gloves and throwing it into the stands and just piecing out midway through the Buccaneers game against Washington this past week. So New York.
The only thing that's remotely even like that it reminded me of is when was it Vontae Davis who just retired at halftime for the Bills?
Yes. No. So was it with the Bills or was he with the Colts at that point?
I thought
because it was at the end of his career.
I thought he was a Bills player.
I think he played with both.
Yeah,
teams,
I think he did too. But that's the only thing I can even think of remotely. But even
I forgot about that. Him literally retiring
but
at halftime.
Even then, there was some class to that where he stayed to the game or whatever, but was just like, I can't, my body can't do it.
You were correct. So it was all of Indianapolis for the vast majority of his career, but then the final season of his career was in Buffalo.
Yeah.
He's credited with a half a game played. So yeah, there you go. He played literally a half a game with the team the whole year.
And honestly, with Antonio Brown, I mean, the thing that it pains me a little bit because you hate listen, we all can have a good laugh at it. I mean, there's some, get funny memes out of it and all that stuff, but there is something, I mean, there's something that he's not 100%, I think, as a healthy human being. And this isn't the only, I mean, you look at his track record. I mean, that's the thing that's scary is like, you see he's got accusations of assaults, both sexual and non-sexual in nature, verbal, videos of him,
robbery,
property damage with delivery drivers. I mean, that it's just a pattern of behavior that is concerning. I mean, that's a lot more than people who talk about like T.O. was a distraction or Ocho Cinco. Sure, but those guys played. Those guys were all about the game when it came down to playing it. And it's sad to see Antonio Brown. He is like Terrell Owens, more so than Ocho Cinco. He is a Hall of Fame player. I mean, he is a Hall of Famer. His talent, his numbers, the stats he put up, a lot like T.O. But now he's going to have to deal with exactly what T.O. has dealt with, which is almost being blacklisted just because of the person that you are, which it is hypocritical because of guys like O.J. Simpson and Lawrence Taylor and Ray Lewis. If you want to get into that, all these other people that we just kind of let skate by a little bit more. O.J. not so much, obviously. But they get in and they get talked with the reverence that anyone else is, but you can't really mention T.O. And AB has just put himself into that category. I credit Tom Brady. Did you see his post game comments on that?
I did. It was interesting because obviously you almost feel bad for Tom because of how much he's had to kind of stick his neck out for the guy.
Yeah.
Brings him into his home, lobbies for him. So you could argue that AB wouldn't have had a job if it weren't for Tom Brady in the NFL. I'm not sure any other team was willing.
It was those guys. It was Seattle and it was Tampa. You're absolutely right. I think Tom's comments to me were then the most of like, oh, okay, this is the guy who there's one person who probably knows Antonio Brown's current mental health state more than anyone else as far as besides family or direct people in the Antonio Brown's camp. And that's Tom Brady. He's literally been living with the guy, like training with them nonstop. And so for him to say what he said, and Tom was the ultimate competitor who would never, ever put himself above a win or team or things like that. For him to come out and immediately be like, listen, I just hope that he's well, and kind of alluding to him not being well, that then to me goes like, I'm not going to be overly critical. I mean, yeah, you can laugh at some memes and everything like that, but I'm not going to try and diagnose Antonio Brown.
We just don't know. I mean, we don't know.
It's to me, it's the end of a career. It's the end of a Hall of Fame career. And a guy who had a stretch of yards that he put up in back-to-back seasons that no one else, I think, did in NFL history the way he was producing at. And to see it just kind of end like this in a bizarre incident. I mean, it's very on point for Antonio Brown's career. And I think, again, a warning to every young receiver. If you're an agent of a young wide receiver right now, the DK Metcalfs, the Odell Beckham Jr.'s, the Justin Jeffersons, the Jamar Chases of the world, any young receiver who's still got playing time left in their career with a lot of money you can make like this, please continue to use this as an example. If you need help, get help. Behave, you know what I mean? Like he can still play, but his career's over.
Yeah, I don't I think at this point it's pretty clear that there's a lot of other things that need to be paid attention to. And for a team, I mean, it's just at this point, it's just too big of a risk, I think, to take on. Granted, I kind of thought that before even last season, but they were willing to roll the dice, so to speak. And obviously, he helped them big time in that Super Bowl run and in the Super Bowl itself. So, he was still making an impact. But yeah, I mean, Bruce Arians himself said he's never seen anything like this in his entire career, and it is what it is. It comes with the territory. So a crazy ending to the Antonio Brown saga. And at this point, I guess what you could say is just hope the guy finds, whatever help he needs. Cause there's clearly, something going on. We just don't know what it is.
Comeback win for the Bucs. I mean, that gets overshadowed. The fact the Bucs were down the Jets in that game. And
I mean, you look at that game midway through and you're like, oh my goodness.
The old hats, Gronk and Brady find a way to pull it out against the Jets, what they've done many, many times, as Gronk and Brady have.
A perfect way to kind of transition ourselves into this week 16 or 17, I should say, recap.
Yeah.
As we get, usually at this time of year, we're talking about, all right, the playoff picture is completely set. Now we're looking forward to the first week, but obviously the unique season in which we begin this extended playoff or regular season and, second year of the 8th seed or 7th seed, I should say. So a lot to talk about here, Mark. The NFC playoff picture is all but set. We have one team kind of vying for a playoff spot, and that's whether or not it's going to be the 49ers, who currently hold the 6th seed, or the New Orleans Saints, who are the only other team that could possibly compete for that spot. Everyone else has clinched in those spots. And then in terms of the AFC, we have 5 spots that have been clinched and 2 others that are kind of up for grabs, with quite a few on the bubble as well. So there's, a few different scenarios that can play out this next week. But obviously this past weekend of games was a big determining factor in who's in and who's going home. Some teams eliminated, some teams clinching their division or a playoff berth. So we'll just jump right in it, I guess, with talk about, the Green Bay Packers, who already had clinched the division. They clinched the 1 seed in the NFC. So now the road to the Super Bowl is going to have to go through Lambeau Field. Obviously not a great place for any opposing team to have to enter into. But as we've seen in recent years, Mark, that has been the case. And the Packers haven't been able to get it done at home, particularly in the championship game. But important to note, Matt LaFleur, a lot of things have been overshadowed. We've been talking a lot about Aaron Rodgers the past few seasons, with the talk of retirement, talk of new teams, where they're going to go, and then just all the things that have come with maybe the disappointment. MVP, disappointment at the end of the season for the team as a whole. But Matt LaFleur, first head coach ever in his first 3 seasons to win 13 games in each. That is an impressive feat. And, we don't maybe lump him into coach of the year talks very much, maybe because it's expected and because he has Aaron Rodgers. But my goodness, that's a tough feat to achieve. So there's something to be said for Green Bay being at the spot that they're in right now at 13-3, locking up the 1 seed.
And I think I saw somewhere on Twitter that this was the first team in NFL history to win 13 straight or more games 3 years in a row as well.
Yeah, so
I mean, it really is. They're on a span. And listen, it's as a Bears fan, there's there's positives and negatives to this. Obviously, the negative being that you never like to see your hated rival on a magical run like this.
Sure.
But the positive is, I mean, all they have to show for it is a couple NFC Championship game loss, an NFC Championship game loss, and Aaron Rodgers an MVP. You know what I mean? Like it's I can always hold that against them as well. It's hard to win in this league. It's hard to win Super Bowls in this league. Brady makes it look easy, but you got to remember, for everyone else, it's really hard to win Super Bowls. And I think
they even went a decade without winning it.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things. It's a good reminder too when we talk about like all-time great quarterbacks that people want to throw Rodgers right in there, like neck and neck with Brady. It's like, well, those are the moments you have to remind yourself. Yeah, Rodgers, what he does stats-wise, it really is incredible. But there is something special about Tom and what he's done in his career overall that you just I don't know. I compare it to anyone but Michael Jordan, where it's just like he's got something to where it's like that. I know you can look back at Jordan's career just like Brady's. You find the breaks, the Tuck rule. Listen, everyone who wins something, even if it's just one time, you get a break somewhere along the line. But to get multiple breaks or multiple decades and multiple years, I mean, there's something to it. Anyways, and then when you get in that vein, I'll just say this about Green Bay. I think this year feels a little different from years past. I think part of it is because they're on such a stretch. I mean, remember, they got blown out week 1 in Jacksonville by New Orleans. We were talking all of season. Rodgers wasn't with the team. He was going through all the trade talks, and then they show up and get absolutely obliterated. I think he threw 2 interceptions in that game, where it was one of those where we're like, whoa, the Packers, this is going to be amazing to watch the decline. We were talking about, is Jordan Love, when are we going to get to see Jordan Love? Will they trade Aaron Rodgers mid-season? There was so much noise around this team. For them to be 12-2 over their last 14 games, and really proving everyone wrong in the sense that everyone who doubts the Packers, us included, has always said, well, we just haven't seen them be physical in the Matt LaFleur era. We haven't seen them play the defense like a Tampa did last year or San Francisco did 2 years ago, the last 2 teams to beat the Matt LaFleur Packers in the playoffs. This year does feel a little different. They feel like a more physical team. I think part of that is the maturation of Dillon along with Aaron Jones. I mean, their running game is very physical. It's very downhill. When you combine that with Aaron Rodgers' ability on play action, it is absolutely deadly. It really is. I've seen it firsthand so many times. And their defense the stars aren't playing as big, but collectively as a unit, they're playing a more physical brand of defense that really bodes well for them. And I think they're playing with an immense amount of confidence right now. You got to feel good if you're a Packers fan, and you got to feel good about the fact that you're going to be hosting those games, and it's later than ever. So the weather could be more a factor than ever. You know what I mean? You add an extra week on to when the NFC Championship game will be played for mid-January to late January or late January or February. I don't know the exact dates now. That can be the difference between 30 degrees and 3 degrees in a game in Lambeau Field, and an inch of snow and 2 feet of snow. you just never know. And Aaron Rodgers and this Green Bay Packers team seem very, very poised for a deep playoff run at this point.
I think the scariest part about them, and maybe what lends to the theory that this is a little bit different this season than the past couple, is just that they've done this with some, key injuries and then just, middle level injuries too. But they're in the next couple weeks expected to get quite a few guys back, including Jair Alexander, who they ended up having to put on the COVID list before this last game.
Yeah.
But then, David Bakhtiari is, could be back, and Randall Cobb, who obviously he's not, a world beater, but he has a relationship with Aaron and a trustworthy guy and has been there, done that. So a few of those guys coming back could be a big, boost for a team that now gets a bye, and that will be huge for them moving forward. You only have to win 2 games at home to get back to the Super Bowl. So big stuff there for them. The only team that's locked up a seed in the NFC standing. So we have a lot of shifting that could happen between 2 through 7. The Rams sit at 2 right now. A big win for them, Mark, over the Ravens, who, couldn't have started worse really for the Rams. Couple really bad interceptions by Matthew Stafford in the first half, but they're able to overcome it and get a win late. And, the Ravens on the flip side, just kind of brutal for them, because they were a team, and I felt still comfortable having them be, one of the top teams in the AFC, winning the AFC North. They just, they have had zero luck when it comes to injuries throughout this entire year. A tough break for them. They almost won it, but the Rams just, too much to overcome, I guess, late in that game for the Ravens. But a big win for the Rams. So they get that 2 seed, obviously a place they want to be here. They sit at 12-4, a big NFC West showdown coming up next week. So, where do you feel about this team in terms of them heading into the postseason? Are they going to be able to, stay in that 2 seed or not? Because there's a lot of shakeup that could be involved here.
They're on a 5-game win streak ever since, we were panicking about the Rams, 5 weeks ago when they brought in Von Miller. They brought in Odell Beckham Jr., but they're still losing games. Remember, they were 7-1, I believe. And then they fall to 7-4, 3-game losing streak, to then go on a 5-game winning streak. Listen, I like the Rams right now. I think they'll take care of San Francisco next week. It's in LA. I think they also understand the importance of helping them knock San Francisco out of the playoffs. This is not any sort of people getting rest type of game, LA feeling good about themselves. The last thing you want is to lose that game. San Francisco's to win. Other things fall into place, and you got to play them again the same game next week in a row. You just don't want to do that. Kyle Shanahan and his relationship with McVay. So I think they're going to be looking at this week very much like a playoff game. And you know what? I think that part of what led to the ugly game for them in Baltimore. And, Baltimore, they didn't know, was Lamar going to play all week or not? He's kind of back and forth. Baltimore jumped out on them early, got at Stafford, got the 2 interceptions. Stafford played great the second half to help lead them to that win. And I think that's the type of bounce back win to where you're like, oh, okay, you breathe that sigh of relief, because it feels like they were looking ahead to this game anyways. In this matchup with San Francisco, it's going to be huge in week 18. I feel good about the Rams. Listen, the Rams, what they need to make sure they do is play as many home games as they can. The last thing the Rams need is to be in Green Bay in the NFC Championship game.
That'd be a rough matchup for them.
Having the 2nd seed locked up to know that they could be playing the NFC Championship game if there's an upset in their home building, and then knowing the Super Bowl is in their home building, that is monumental for LA. And I honestly believe getting that 2 seed in and playing either a Tampa or a Dallas in LA in week 2 of the playoffs, that's such a better matchup for them as opposed to them having to be the one who goes to Green Bay in week 2 of the playoffs. It is, I know looking ahead, and that means you're basically giving them a win, but if you're talking about the Rams prospects of how far they can go, so much of it depends on that. But I think the Rams are very capable of representing the NFC in the Super Bowl right now. I think they're playing great football. They have the possibility to get Henderson back. They're running the ball well. They've gone back to what Sean McVay really does well. The offense has looked more like Sean McVay's offensive light. And I'll say this, that big touchdown to Odell Beckham Jr. at the end of that game, OBJ has been great for them. Now, Jalen Ramsey fighting his own teammates, OBJ punching butts. I mean, there's some weird things going on with the Rams. They got a lot of personalities, but Odell has been a real weapon for them. And I do think this Rams team right now is the second best team in the NFC. It really feels that way.
Yeah, I agree. And OBJ is in the perfect role that he needs. Like, I think a lot of people, and I don't see it as much of a knock, maybe certain players would take it as a knock, but he might just not be the, true number one on a team anymore, but he's a phenomenal, compliment to anyone. And to have him be someone that is on the other side of a potential double team is scary for defense, like any defense in the league. I mean, you're going to have to double Cooper Kupp because of how phenomenal of a season he's had, but OBJ is not just some scrub on the other side. You got to deal with them one way or another. So that's a difficult component to have to, take into consideration. And the NFC West is up for grabs here. I mean, Arizona could get a win next week and potentially put themselves in a place to take that division from the Rams. And for the Rams, if they lose, to really drop down in the seedings there, to your point, and have to a much more difficult road in the playoffs. So a lot of implications here for the final week of the regular season for that entire division, really. And obviously San Fran playing for their playoff lives. So all three of those teams have a lot on the line in terms of, how they're going to fare, because Arizona, another team, the way we've seen them in recent weeks, I don't necessarily feel super comfortable with them being in the 5 seed, having to go on the road to, one of these, is it going to be the Cowboys, who I don't think they necessarily match up well with, or the Buccaneers, a couple of these teams, really difficult matchups for the Cardinals. So a similar situation there for them too.
I will say, I mean, one last thought on the Rams, Odell Beckham Jr., 5 touchdowns in 7 games to them. That's exactly what you want. Now he has
1 touchdown with the Browns, right? This year before that,
no touchdowns with the Browns.
No, 0 touchdowns. There you go.
And he hasn't broken 100 yards receiving, but again, you're absolutely right. Odell is a weapon around the red zone. He at this point in time in his career is almost like a slot receiver who can still go up and make big catches. His burning speed isn't necessarily there anymore, but he's still a great route runner and he's got great hands. Do you want to talk about Baltimore, or do you just wait for the AFC when we get to the AFC? Because I have some thoughts on Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, we'll touch them at the AFC one, because they still have a potential road to a playoff berth, so we can absolutely discuss that when we get to that point. Let's talk Buccaneers, because they're the 3 seed right now in the NFC. And that was almost a disastrous game for them in more than one way. Obviously, with the Antonio Brown thing at halftime, kind of stole the spotlight of the entire performance. But they were down early and, throughout, to the New York Jets of all teams. And, vintage Tom Brady fashion, leads them to the game winner with like 10 seconds to go or something like that. And they end up pulling out the victory, which was an important one for them, as they now sit in the 3 seed. They clinched the division. They're 12-4. And still with an opportunity here to maybe push themselves into the 2 seed and be on much better footing there. But, the past few weeks, Mark, the Bucs have looked a lot different, right? They've kind of scraped by in some ways. But all that being said, they're finding a way to win games, and they're still getting it done. They lost Leonard Fournette. Yeah. They lost Chris Godwin. They lose AB now. A lot of things haven't necessarily gone in their favor. Gronk was injured for a little bit of a stretch there. But they're finding a way to win games, and I think that's pretty telling with them because, we may not think that they're as scary as maybe some other teams in the league, but at the end of the day, I mean, they found ways to win. They're, 6-1 over the last 7 weeks. I mean, this team is still an impressive team and a dangerous team in the playoffs, and I think maybe people are writing them off somewhat, like keeping them on the fringes when we're talking about Green Bay, we're talking about the Rams, but really, I mean, the Bucs, look out. They're still extremely dangerous, even without some of those weapons.
I'll just first off say this. The Jets are a weird team. I mean, they beat the Titans earlier. They beat the Bengals. They seem to play up to their competition in a weird way, and then they have embarrassing losses. So it was one of those games where I wasn't necessarily shocked, because it's on the road in New York, and the Jets always seem to play up in these kind of weird situations. But a hell of a comeback win for Tampa to get the W, because again, Tampa's, I feel the same way about the Rams. Everything I just said, I feel the same way about Tampa. I firmly believe, right now I like the Rams a little bit more than Tampa, only because I do think they are overall healthier. Tampa, though, you could easily make the argument they are the second best team in the NFC, and they won. Remember, they won the Super Bowl last year on a wild card, so they don't need to be home. They went on the road every single game and marched their way to the Super Bowl. That's Tom Brady. That's what this Buccaneers team, I still think, is capable of for the most part. I'll just say this. I think this AB thing is coming at a really good time for Tampa, because now they know they don't have him. They don't have to baby him. They don't have to deal with, hey, we're down on receivers. We've got to find a way to make AB work. It feels like that was probably a lot of what the locker room was dealing with. Hey, guys, I know this is frustrating, but we need him. Godwin's out. Like, we need the body. And now that that's just gone. It's all about who's stepping up. What are the players in that locker room right now that can step up, make plays, and just work within that offense? And that's what Tom Brady is best at, right? I mean, he is best at taking an unknown guy, and all of a sudden he has 7 catches for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns in a big game. And you're like, who the bleep is this guy? Where did he come from? You know what I mean? Finding the matchups. They still have Mike Evans. They still have Rob Gronkowski. They still have a very solid backfield and a good offensive line and the greatest quarterback of all time. I will say this about Tampa, though. They have got to be rooting for the Niners next week. For them to they're in a similar boat. If they can get the 2 seed and they can find a way to have home field and maybe Green Bay gets upset, it's more about avoiding Green Bay. If you're LA and Tampa, it's all about who's going to avoid Green Bay until you absolutely have to go to Green Bay. And then you just hope and pray that a Dallas or an Arizona or a Philly, someone else goes to Green Bay and pulls a miraculous upset and does something crazy. But otherwise avoiding that trip to Lambeau Field. All the other destinations in the NFC playoffs, not bad. I mean, Philly, you never know what the weather's like. Philly could be wet or rainy, but they're not going to host anything. So, somehow Arizona's hosting something, or Dallas, Tampa, or LA. Those are not bad places to play.
You got 2 domes there and then warm weather. So
it's just that avoiding the monster and the weather that is Green Bay provides. But listen, I feel really good about Tampa. And I think this AB thing will emotionally actually help Tampa, even though they lose the talent. I don't think it's that big of a loss talent-wise to where Tom Brady, you're telling me, can't find a practice squad guy, spend a week with him, and turn him into something. Of course.
Scotty Miller might have one of those epic runs in the playoffs. You could see that happen.
So I still feel really good about Tampa, Dan.
Yeah. And I feel pretty good, honestly, too, about the Dallas Cowboys, because I personally think that with how good their defense has played over the course of the season,
true.
That to me, the biggest concern I would have with Dallas is the same that I would pretty much have with every team in the NFC, and that's I don't think they could go to Lambeau and win there.
Yeah,
but Dallas could, easily win. I mean, we just saw it, this past week with a victory over a close loss to the Cardinals, where they could have easily won that game. I would take that if they played again. I would absolutely take the Cowboys to win this game. I think they match up well with the Rams. I think they could give them a run for their money. I would probably pick the Rams to win. But overall, I mean, what are your thoughts on the Cowboys? Are you not confident in them? I see them winning at least 1 playoff game and possibly 2.
The problem I have with the Cowboys right now is I think of it like in the college football, like the BCS era, when you're trying to like select teams and you say, or like college basketball, like, hey, here's their big wins. Their biggest win, I mean, honestly, their biggest win is a overtime win, 2 months ago in New England. Like, that's their biggest win. And that is a really solid win because New England is New England, but it's a rookie quarterback. And it was a shootout. Their defense did not play well in that game.
I would argue, though, to go into the Superdome and win by 10 against the Saints in against a defense that's been dominant, that shut out Tom Brady, to put up 27 against the Saints defense. Yeah, but
okay. But again, they have a bunch of those type of wins, right? But those aren't. You're playing Tom Brady, you're playing Matthew Stafford, you're playing them in their buildings. So I'm not trying to hate on Dallas. I'm not saying Dallas is a fraud, but what I'm saying is I just do not have Dallas at all in the class that I think they're not anywhere to me near Green Bay's class. And I still think they're a solid step down from LA and Tampa in the NFC, where I just don't give them a chance. Right now, they're being the 4th seed. They're going to most likely have to play Arizona again in their building again. And Arizona, to me, you can easily say, if you look at the score, that Dallas could easily have won that game. Arizona, if you watched, I watched a good amount of that game, they controlled that game. And Kyler Murray was just deadly on 3rd down. His scrambles, just little dink and dunk things. They controlled what they want to do against that Dallas defense. They played a great game against the Dallas defense. It's very turnover reliant and big play reliant. They're good, but they rely on big plays, big sacks at the right time, and big interceptions, which isn't bad. But this Dallas,
and they got one in this game, but it just wasn't called.
And that's true as well. So I think they're very much the best. They're right there with Arizona is the best of that next group. I think they're a step up above San Fran. They're a step up above New Orleans. They're a step up above Philly. But I think them and Arizona, I feel the exact same about. Could they each win a game in the playoffs? Could Arizona beat Dallas? I can see it. Could Dallas beat Arizona? I can see it. Do I give them any chance to win games beyond that? Not right now. I just don't. Unless they come out and they're really impressive in week 18, and then either one of them dominates the other in that wild card weekend, then maybe I'll feel differently going into the second week of the playoffs. But right now, they really screwed themselves. They had an opportunity to be the 2 seed. They had an opportunity to have multiple home field games, and they blew it with a home loss to a team that they're probably now going to have to play again. I just don't feel great about that sitting right now if I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. And I'll be honest, this year is really important to Dallas because I just don't know what you're getting out of Zeke next year. You already lost Pollard, your wide receiver now for the season with the torn ACL. And Dak is so reliant on a great run game and their defense being opportunistic. As much as their defense has a lot of talent, no defense consistently gets the turnovers to play they do year after year. You even see Aaron Donald taking a step back this year. Micah Parsons is great, but is he going to be the exact same great? We saw it with Chase Young was great his rookie year, takes a big step back year 2. I just feel like this was a year that they had a lot of momentum going, and this home loss against Arizona, as much as Mike McCarthy in his post-game press conference tried to downplay it, I really do think this was a huge loss for them because, again,
it was big.
You basically lost 2 home playoff games.
Yeah. No, that's true. And you put yourself in a precarious situation now. I am curious, do you think, because their only downside now is switching one spot. And I don't even know, could they get the 3 seed if they win next week and the Buccaneers lose?
Well, let me play it out here a little bit. So they're at Philly, which is not going to be it's going to be a tough game.
Yeah.
So if they beat
but I'm wondering if they don't really have anything to gain, they're probably going to be one of those teams that rest their players next week.
Not necessarily, because if they beat Philly and the Niners win, and where is the Bucs game? I'm on the ESPN playoff machine. If somehow the Bucs lose and the Rams lose, now the Bucs are hosting Carolina, they won't lose. But if they do, Dallas can go back to the 2. So they do have motivation.
But they need both the Rams and the Bucs to lose.
No, they can get the 3 if one of them loses. So that Niners team, for the Niners, and then they try to win, and then that could almost guarantee them a second home playoff game, possibly. But
I guess you gotta fight for it then if you're Dallas.
You're also if you're Dallas, you're not gonna see Philly again. So no matter what happens, if Philly wins, then Philly, the best they can do is the 6 seed, right? So you're not gonna, and the worst you can do is the 4. So you're not gonna see Philly back-to-back weeks like the Niners and LA could end up happening, where it's back-to-back weeks. So I do think there's a case to be made for the Dallas Cowboys surrendering the game to Philly. But I mean, that looks bad. You know what I mean? They're in a tough spot. Again, they put themselves in a tough spot because any team, you want to be playing for something every week. And I'm sorry, right now, you're all right. Dallas is in a weird spot where, they got to be rooting for San Fran and beat Philly. And then it's just, I just really think if I'm a Cowboys fan this morning, I would have to be more real about this. That loss is way more concerning than Mike McCarthy let on.
Yeah, it was not ideal, and it was certainly a situation that they could have taken advantage of and put themselves in a much better positioning here. The Cardinals take on the Seahawks in the final week, and I don't think any of us would be surprised if the Seahawks played spoiler in this one and, push the Cardinals down a peg. They are obviously in the 5 seed right now. And then to round it out, like we mentioned, the 49ers currently in the 6 and the Eagles in the 7th, but the Eagles have clinched a playoff spot. So really the only ones fighting for positioning here are the 49ers to maintain and to clinch a playoff spot. So they're obviously going to get up for this game. And then it's the Saints who, are on the outside looking in. But if the chips fall where they may, the Saints could find themselves in the playoff picture, which is crazy to think after the Jameis Winston injury, where you're basically mailing in the season. And here we are, with them with an opportunity, and they play the Falcons next week. So this could happen.
If I'm Arizona, I'm resting people. I'm absolutely. You are locked in at the 5, and you're going to be on the road somewhere, most likely Dallas, but either Dallas, frankly, or LA. So 2 really solid teams, because you feel like Tampa's going to beat Carolina. That feels like a guaranteed win. It's in Tampa. They're going to treat it like it's an important game because they want to figure out their offense without AB and what that's going to look like. If you're Tampa, the best thing you can do, get out to a 27-3 lead at halftime and then rest everyone in the second half. You know what I mean? But if I'm Arizona, I'm 100% resting people. They've been beat up all season. I would go on COVID lockdowns. I would say, no one go out, stay in your homes, and get rest. I mean, because this is there's nothing for them to gain, and everything for them to lose, depending on who gets injured or what could happen COVID wise. I will say this, Dan, you also got to remember the late games next week include the Saints and the Falcons, the 49ers and the Rams. So the NFL is really smart with their scheduling. The Rams, the Saints, and the Niners won't know. They'll just have to play. They both have to go all in, try to win those games. So they can't purposefully, rest if you're the Niners and just know that you've locked it up anyways because the Saints lost. So that's really important. It is one of those weird weeks too, where if you're the Niners, you're either the 6 seed or you're out. You're not the 7 seed. And that's, again, based on win percentage in division. So it's weird, but it's just the way that those seedings work. You think to yourself, oh, well, why isn't Philly at risk? They're the 7 seed. No, Philly's locked it up because of wins in division and common opponents, things like that, versus San Francisco. If I'm Arizona, I'm resting everyone. If I'm Philly and I'm San Francisco, I'm going balls to the wall. Nothing to lose for these two teams where they were at to try to win those games. If you're Philly, you want to shake your rival, the Cowboys. And if you're San Fran, you want to shake your rival, the Rams. And you want to play. If you're San Fran, you win, you clinch the 6, and you play the Rams again next week. I mean, that's a tasty dream scenario if you're San Francisco. And if you're Philly, why not try to embarrass your rivals and then shake them going into the playoffs? And who knows what then happens for them on a 2-game losing streak going into the playoffs, hosting an Arizona team who's going to be hungry and rested.
Yeah, you want to bring some momentum into the postseason for sure. If you're one of those teams like Philly or whatnot, if you're Green Bay, you're like, all right, we'll just, if we lose, we lose, whatever. Like we'll take it into the, opening round or the divisional round for them. But I feel pretty confident actually in the 49ers to pull this one out and to stay in their positioning and clinch a playoff spot. I just think, the matchup earlier this year, I'm not necessarily sure it's going to be a blowout like it was earlier this year against the Rams, where they won by 3 touchdowns. But the 49ers are starting to get healthy at the right time. And, we've seen the Rams have some shaky performances as of late. I know they've won, but there's a little bit more uncertainty, I would think, going into that. Now, obviously, Jimmy G, where's he going to be at? That's going to be the big question mark, I think. If the 49ers are going to have to ride Trey Lance, then we've got some big, concerns there. But they get Elijah Mitchell back. They've got a strong run game. We know kind of how they match up. So it'll be an interesting one to see. But I still think the 49ers are able to kind of clinch that spot there in the postseason.
Dan, it is funny. I mean, I don't disagree. I think the Niners are, they're fun. They're fun to watch just because you just kind of don't know what you're getting from Kyle Shanahan. I mean, you know what you're getting, but you don't know what you're getting. You know what I mean? It's weird.
I will say the usage or lack thereof with George Kittle is mind-boggling. 1 week, the guy is peppered with targets and goes off. The next week, they look his way twice. It's that's been bizarre.
It has been bizarre. I will say this, though. If you are the Rams, I think not only do you desperately want to win your game, but you are rooting for New Orleans to win, because if you win and Atlanta somehow wins at home against New Orleans, you play the Niners as the 7 seed, 2 seed again the following week. I just played out the playoff machine again here. And so it's possible as LA, you could win and still play San Francisco. And again, you won't know that because of when the games are scheduled. So if you're a Rams fan, there's a lot. I mean, so much at stake here. I feel like you've got to be rooting for LA. If you're a Rams fan, you got to be rooting for the Saints to win that game. You'd much rather play a Taysom Hill led offense, let your guys go off and rush that passer and try to get a Taysom Hill on the road versus seeing the Niners again. I gotta believe that'd
be an ideal setup, I would think. Yeah, for sure. Just the matchup in general is much more favorable. Before we get to the AFC, Mark, we have our bold strategy of the week, and this one's a doozy. So obviously, your Chicago Bears put a hurting on the New York Giants this past week, held them to just a field goal scoring. So rough go for the Giants,
85,
and a rough year 2 for Joe Judge and company. But obviously, the guy's feeling, is back against the wall, perhaps. And, there's been a lot of criticisms from all around. New York media is, historically going to be tough on you. And Joe Judge kind of took that head on this week in a strange exchange / rant where he was, trying to, I guess, put his stamp on the confidence level of where they're going and what they're doing here in the New York Giants organization. But basically, Joe Judge doing a little bit of a PR move here, saying that he's heard from players who left the team last year in free agency and how, several of them have been begging, and wishing that they were back in New York, even though they're making money, more money elsewhere. And that was just a microcosm of a larger point that he was trying to make with a lot of other statements talking about how, a lot of players are begging to even stay with the team who are due to be free agents next year. A weird, flex, if you will, given the season that they've had and going and following a big time loss. Just a strange series of events there from Joe Judge in what was, I believe, somewhat around the ballpark of a 10-minute rant with the media postgame.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
It was very weird. I will say, I mean, listen, it's weird to me the Giants have already given him the confidence to come back, because it does seem like Gettleman is going to be, the GM could be on his way out. and then you're just a sitting duck. I mean, listen, players aren't stupid. Unless they all know for a fact there are some guys calling, and the guys calling getting paid more money to be elsewhere, I'd like to try to do the detective work on the roster. Like, okay, who's on the Giants last year that's now not on the Giants but went somewhere else and got more money? I'm trying to think about. I don't know, but like to be like, who are these players that could be calling him? I mean, it just seems like it's. Listen, I've heard a lot of stupid things from head coaches at press conference and Matt Nagy. This is up there with like the most kind of pathetic, sad, stupid thing. You also, I mean, let's just be honest. Your game plan yesterday was offensively. It was just like, we cannot do anything. We're just going to run the ball and try to end this game as quickly as possible. If I'm a fan of the Giants, I mean, that is more infuriating than anything I'd ever experienced as a Bears fan. I mean, I would rather watch Mike Glennon go out there and throw 6 interceptions and try to run an offense and actually score some points than literally just hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley 21 times and he only gets 102 yards. I mean, It's just bad. I mean, everything bad in New York. And I've seen it in Chicago. When it's that bad, the coach is not the right guy. Like, I mean, they're not decimated so bad with injuries. I mean, it's this bad, but that's not the excuse. Like, I mean, that is just pathetic. Your coaching staff should take whatever players they have and still put a game plan together. It's like, no, we're going to try to win this game. That was not what they did. Their game plan was, we're going to lose. Let's run the ball as many times as we can and try to get out of here quickly. That's bleeping pathetic. And Joe Judge then saying what he said afterwards. I saw some
icing on the cake.
He was making up some stuff about other things. Like there were some other tweets about. I'll try and dig and find them. I mean, just a bad day overall for Joe Judge.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine. And someone put out the list is real short. It's Kevin Zeitler and one other player that he could have been talking about. Oh, it was Dalvin Tomlinson who went to the Minnesota Vikings. So, those two players are the only free agents from last year that went elsewhere this year. So, I mean, and a lot of people are like, it just seems weird that they would be talking with him and begging to come back in that sort of way. Why would you want to go back to that, kind of dumpster fire of a season that they've had?
Well, and so this is from Kevin Clark, who's absolutely great. Not our Kevin Clark. This is the guy who
the Ringer.
Ringer. He's great. He's a fantastic follow on Twitter.
He is.
He said, since Joe Judge's job was declared safe, he's lost every game by at least 2 touchdowns. He implied that Belichick was on the hot seat during a Super Bowl winning season. Told a Maureen Todd story about players wishing they played for the Giants, and made up an alternate 2019 season all-time run by Joe Judge.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll add to that, Wesley Steinberg, who's an NFL and Giants insider, he tweeted yesterday, quote, "The Giants will fire head coach Joe Judge at the end of the season. Today's game was the final straw for Mara." That's the owner, John Mara. Judge had a chance to come back if the team fought hard following Jones's injury, but it's been a disaster. The odd post-game interview from Judge was him pleading for his job, end quote. So, take it for what you will, but
well, listen, I said
the guy's not out of the weeds.
I said in one of our first shows, the beginning of last year, I just had zero faith in Joe Judge. I thought he showed a little bit. They went on that kind of run midseason last year, but his organization has been a joke since the middle of last year. It's been over a year, and it's just been bad. And I get it. There's some injuries at stake, but everyone deals with injuries, and you can deal with injuries and still not be a clown show. And that is a clown show. I mean, running the ball that many times, you as the head coach, knowing that like you're confident going into Mike Glennon with the game plan, it's just bad. I know we're spending way too much time on this, but it is a bold strategy nonetheless to try and save your job that way. And I think it should be over in New York. They should do a clean sweep, just like the Bears should do.
Yep. Rip the Band-Aid.
Just like the Jags should do. There's reports that they're going to bring back their GM. I think they should clean sweep. If you're firing a coach, you should fire the GM that hired him, unless there's some extenuating circumstances beyond the GM. You could prove to me the GM really was a great GM and did some other things really well. You should always clean house. let the new GM hire the new head coach and have a symbiotic relationship in that way.
Yeah, and they still have time to do it. We saw the Cardinals move off of their franchise quarterback and their brand new head coach. They did it. And look where they're at now.
That general manager, is that Steve Keim to save his job?
Yeah. And that, obviously, like, that's a tough pill to swallow, to admit how wrong, that you were that wrong, but it's better in the long run if you just get out in front of it. In the AFC, Mark, the Tennessee Titans, without Derrick Henry, have managed to find themselves in the 1 seed. An incredible turn of events that I certainly didn't see coming, even given, their dominance early on with Henry and company. They have found a way to scrap and claw and fight. A.J. Brown back healthy, but Julio Jones obviously, got put on IR. So they've missed weapons throughout the season, and somehow here they are at 11-5 with the 1 seed. What do you make of this team after they put a hurting on the Miami Dolphins that were on probably the best run of the season in terms of their 7-game winning streak, a 34-3 absolute destruction of Miami? It's hard for me to make a determination of this team. They're one of the more confusing clubs in all of football right now.
I think it's actually pretty easy. Let me guide you. Let me show you the light.
Please enlighten
me. They're a good team. They're the Dallas Cowboys, Arizona Cardinals of the AFC. They just did a better job than the Kansas City Chiefs at the beginning and the Buffalo Bills at the beginning of the season to get to where they are. That Miami team was overrated. They were beating up bad teams. The Miami is a solid team. They're not a bad team, but they again did too much damage early on to give themselves. It was too little, too late. And Kansas City was in the same way. They had to be perfect to wind down the season to get the 1 seed after starting 3-4. They had to be perfect. They couldn't be perfect. It's just too hard in this modern NFL against other good teams. And Bengals are a really good team. I still think Kansas City's the best team in the AFC. I still think Kansas City should be favored in the AFC to win the Super Bowl. Tennessee's very good. Tennessee will have a chance to be in the AFC Championship game because I don't really trust anyone going to Tennessee. All these other teams in the AFC I think are very equal to Tennessee. I think Kansas City is the only one I would put, slightly above them. I may even put the Bengals right now slightly above Tennessee just because offensively they're so explosive, Cincinnati. But otherwise, Tennessee's in a really good spot because they're gonna have the 1 seed. But I don't think they're a better team right now than Kansas City and probably Cincinnati. Everyone else, I'd say they're neck and neck with. Against New England, Buffalo, Indy, Chargers, the Raiders, coin flip. But no, they're better than the Raiders, but a coin flip up against anyone else.
I think the Chiefs, Bengals, Bills, Patriots are all better overall than the Tennessee Titans. And that's my thought. We're talking about a team that also did lose to Houston, not that long ago, just a month ago.
So then give
the
confidence
Patriots
to
beat them by 23.
You know what to think of this team. Be confident. You're just like it.
But I don't, because they're going to host. Is this the team that, gutted it out and beat the 49ers in a really tough game? Or is it the team that lost to the Texans by two scores? Like,
it is weird.
They're a weird team for me to figure out because they can wreck you with A.J. Brown. He could have a 12-catch, 150-yard game, or Tannehill and the offense could struggle mightily, and they could depend on a shaky up or down defense that's been at times dominant and at other times, for lack of a better term, just shit the bed. Like, I don't know what this team is. I can't figure them out. I will say I just don't. I guess more of my reluctance is just like, how is this team a 1 seed? That's where I come from. Like, that's why it's confusing for me to figure them out, because they're the 1 seed right now. And to me, it's just, they're not better than 4 other teams that are in that conference right now. So that's where I come from with that.
No, I understand. I just think it's, I just don't necessarily know how much I trust New England in the playoffs with Mac Jones versus, I just think they're in that group. I think Kansas City's still the best of the AFC. I think Bengals are the leader of then kind of everyone else, but Tennessee's done a great job putting themselves in a position by beating Kansas City early, by beating Buffalo in that stretch, even though they had bad losses to the Jets, bad losses to a divisional rival in in the Texans. They beat Indy twice. They took care of the Niners when they had to. I think they're figuring out life without Derrick Henry pretty well right now. And when Brown is healthy, he's a huge part of their offense. So we'll see. I just don't. I don't have them in first class. I'll put it that way. But they're going to be the 1 seed.
And I will say, like, if Henry comes back, then all of a sudden I do think they're better than a lot of those teams because I think Derrick Henry makes that big of a difference. Like I would have, if they get Derrick Henry, then I'm confident against the Patriots, and I'm much more confident against a Cincinnati. But until that we fully get word that he's going to be back, I don't have a ton of confidence. But good for them. They'll at least for right now get to wait until the divisional round. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, obviously, like that was a throwing punches left and right against the Cincinnati Bengals. And a candidate for bold strategy for us was at the end of the game, obviously, when the Bengals are in the 10 zone, we like to call it, inside the 10-yard line, and had an opportunity to get a touchdown. The Chiefs end up stopping them on 4th and goal, but a holding penalty gives the Bengals a new set of downs. And by that point, there was only like 35, 40 seconds left. The bold strategy could have been, a lot of people were saying, with over a minute to go, the Bengals are right there. Let them score. You can trust, you Patrick Mahomes and company to get down. But I can understand on the flip side wanting to say, hey, let's make the Bengals score here, because if it's just a field goal, we'll take 30 seconds with Patrick Mahomes to get a field goal.
Yeah, it was a weird situation. Listen, the game, I love fans get, they freak out. And I'm part of it too. You just can't help it in the moment. They think the game all comes down to that decision. Listen, the Chiefs offense in the second half went dormant and their defense failed. I mean, they lost. The Bengals were the better team that
gave
game.
Up 31 points,
The Bengals were the better team that game at home. It took that type of effort, though, for the Bengals to beat Kansas City at home. They're not going to be playing Kansas City at home at the next time they play them. I don't want to panic too much about Kansas City. I love Kansas City still. Problem is they're just not as perfect as they've been in the past. And part of that is even though they're playing way more like the old Kansas City as of recent, they had such a bad start to the year. This is where they're at. They're not going to be the 1 seed. And that is, it just goes to show you, September affects January. It does in this league. Yeah. It just does. Mm-hmm. And the Chiefs are paying for that. But for the Bengals, I'll move on to them, Dan. I'm really high on them right now. And it's mainly because Joe Burrow he got so snubbed that he should be the Pro Bowl quarterback in the AFC, not Lamar Jackson. Listen, I love Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson's a brilliant talent. I'd love to have Lamar Jackson as the quarterback of my team. But Joe Burrow is, I think, a better quarterback than Lamar Jackson today. And a lot of that has to do with Lamar Jackson. This has been a concern. We've talked about it for years with Lamar Jackson. What is his availability, the way he plays the game? And you need Lamar to be 90% or better in health to play him, because he is only useful to you when he's Lamar Jackson. Because when he's not Lamar Jackson, he's not skilled enough at just being able to dink and dunk at pocket pass and hand the ball off without the threat of him running to win you games. And then you don't want to get him more injured because, again, you need him healthy. When he's healthy, he's a top 10 quarterback. He's electric. He's brilliant. He's an MVP for a reason. But when he's not, which right now it seems more often than not he's not, it's just not the same. That's really all I want to say on the Ravens, where we talked about it earlier. Yeah, but for Joe Burrow, love it. Love him and Jamar Chase and Higgins. They got a mixing. They're electric. I can't wait to watch them in the playoffs.
Yeah, they are clicking on all cylinders. I mean, we said this a couple weeks ago, how the criticisms they took for grabbing Jamar Chase with their what was it, the number 4 pick or number 5 instead of a Penei Sewell or something like that. I mean, it's worked out. It's clearly worked out, and that offense is terrifying. The defense is really solid. They play tough, physical. Joe Mixon's been one of the best running backs in all of football this entire season. It's a team you don't want to see in the playoffs, and they've obviously got that kind of chip on their shoulder as well, that attitude that you don't want to see running into a stadium as an opponent, because they're going to bring that chip, that edge into any matchup. So I'd agree. I mean, they're one of those teams, I think, in probably the whole conference, that you'd be most, scared to have to face.
Definitely.
Given the seeding that likely will happen with them currently in the 3 seed. We'll see if they're able to kind of move themselves up, because I think if they win and the Chiefs lose, they may have Would they be able to get into the 2 seed there? I think they would.
The Chiefs
because they beat the Chiefs, but also
Denver,
I think they have a better conference record.
If the Chiefs lose at Denver, the Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills win at home against the Jets, the Chiefs would be the 4, and Cincy would go to the 2.
There you go. So it's well within reach, and that could be big for Cincy there. But let's move on to the Bills because they are in that 4 seed right now, and they've been another one of those teams that at their height have looked great, but then also have not looked so great at times throughout the season too. But it does seem like they're hitting somewhat of a stride here.
I'll say this about Buffalo. I feel very similar to them about Cincinnati. I love that they're going to get a game at home that feels great for them, feels great for the fan bases. They play these teams, I think, have very similar. They're offensively explosive and they can just score in bunches. But also, they both had weird losses during the year. I mean, the Bengals lost to the Bears at home.
Yeah.
Buffalo lost to the Jags, which are an embarrassment right now. So they can have stinkers, and their defenses, they both have leaks to them. But again, I trust their quarterbacks a ton, and their quarterbacks are uber talented. So do I want to be battling with them? Not necessarily. The AFC has got a lot of good young quarterback talent that looks like it's going to be in the playoffs, and it's just going to be fun to watch. For Buffalo, if you're Buffalo right now, I think you got to be hoping you get New England at home. I think if you're Buffalo, that is something you want to be able to say, New England, come back to our building where you embarrassed us. Let's get some like Buffalo weather and let's go back toe to toe. Let's do this. I think that'd be great drama, great theater. And I think Buffalo is the type of team that could step up to that versus having to worry about Indy and their run game. If it comes to Indy, I don't think that would be great for Buffalo.
I agree. And the Bills Patriots back and forth matchups this year have been pretty entertaining, even in the game where it was, terrible weather. And, a lot of people are still glued to that just to see, who'd be able to come out on top. So I've thought about this now for a few weeks, Mark, with the Patriots here at the 5 seed at 10-6. They clinched playoffs as well. They're a team really that has to win in a very limited set of ways, and so that's been my biggest concern to them. They can beat you if it's mano-a-mano, trench play. They can find a way to win that battle, and they got 2 talented running backs. They have a quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over. Those are key components to winning in the postseason, but just to winning in general. The problem is if they do, especially in the AFC with such, offensive geared teams in the Chiefs, in the Bills. I mean, even in, a team like the Bengals who can, put up a 40 burger on you at any given point. Can they match those types of efforts? That's going to be tough for the Patriots, which is why my confidence in them is pretty minimal. But we know what we've seen. When you doubt the Patriots, anything could happen. They're in the playoffs for a reason. They're a playoff team, and they deserve to be there. The confidence, though, is fairly minimal on my end. What are your thoughts on that? With them
as long as New England's not playing Kansas City, I think it's close to a coin flip. They have a chance, especially in January weather football with Bill Belichick. I mean, the games are going to get low scoring. Teams are going to get tight. A young team like a Cincinnati in the playoffs, imagine how tight they're going to be unless Joe Burrow really is Joey Cool and it is the next coming of Joe Montana where he just can go for 400 yards. It doesn't matter. The nerves don't affect him, which to his credit in his career right now, you could argue that he is that guy. New England, I trust them to win a playoff game, maybe 2, depending on how things fall. They got to avoid Kansas City because I just don't think Kansas City's the one team in the AFC where you think about New England being the veteran team in the AFC, but because they have the rookie quarterback, Kansas City and Tennessee right now are the old hats, and Buffalo, because this is their 3rd year in a row being in the playoffs, or 4th year in a row now, 3rd, 4th, something like that. Like, I feel confident about them because they have the little more of the track record versus a lot of these younger teams newer to the playoffs with young quarterbacks, or like Carson Wentz, who's a wild card in of itself. And we can move to the Colts next, and Carson Wentz, being with the Colts for the first time. Yeah.
And I mean, that's the big question mark for me, like, especially, speaking to the Colts, what are they remind me similarly too, because they're limited as well. Yeah. I mean, and mainly because of Carson Wentz erratic play, Jonathan Taylor's dominant. The defense is really good.
Yeah.
Can they elevate? Can they overcome certain circumstances in the postseason? Those are some of the big question marks. Obviously the Patriots have themselves a clinched spot, but whether or not their seeding difference could fluctuate between the 5, the 6, and the 7 this next week.
Yeah.
And if they are the 7, they are going to play the Chiefs. That's a really tough spot for the New England Patriots to be in, and really any of these teams to be in. But it's going to be a combination of one of those guys. Like the Colts, the Chargers are also vying for position there in the 6, 7 seed. And then there are quite a feu teams on the outside looking in.
That's the debate right now in the AFC. So you have the Colts, the Chargers, the Raiders, and then like the Ravens kind of the outside chance. I personally think Colts are going to be in. They're at Jacksonville next week. There's no way that Jonathan Taylor doesn't just carry the ball 40 times for 200 yards. And you're
just going to crush me like that, man. The Steelers' chances of winning require them winning out and the Colts losing to Jacksonville, and they're in.
Yeah, the Colts are in. And then I would say, it comes down to, Dan, week 18. Let's talk about it really quickly. Just quick thoughts on it. Chargers at Raiders.
Huge game.
That's for the 7 seed. What do you think?
I think the Chargers. I mean, they too much firepower on this team, and I think I trust Brandon Staley in this situation. I trust the continuity that they've developed over the past 2 years with Justin Herbert. What the Raiders have done is impressive, and I don't want to minimize that because of just all of the turmoil that they've had to go through. But if we really, really look at it, I mean, on paper, the better team is the Chargers. I think we can all agree with that. They just have the better roster. Coach, advantage Chargers. This one is this is in LA.
It's in
correct?
LA. No, it's in Vegas. In Vegas.
Okay, all right. I was going to say advantage Chargers there, but okay. So you give the Raiders a little bit of an advantage there. Quarterback. It's not as, drastic of a change as some may think, but obviously advantage Chargers, I would say. Justin Herbert, you trust that. And the weapons they have. I just think it's too much to contend with for the Raiders and too much to overcome. They've had to overcome a lot each win that they've had in the back half of the season. That comes to a point where it's like, this isn't sustainable. The Chargers at least are a team we have seen fluctuate, but a team that can put up a lot of points. And I'm not sure I trust the Chargers defense to be able to contain this group, this attack, with all of that's riding on the line for them that it is.
I agree with everything you said. I will just add this. I just think at this point in time for the Raiders, that was such a monumental win over Indy, an unexpected win over Indy to stay alive. Can they do that twice in a row? I don't know. I either way, whichever team gets in, Chargers or Raiders in that 7 seed, they will have earned it. They've both gone through ups and downs this season. Rookie, head coach, second-year quarterback versus everything that the Raiders have been through. They'll have earned that spot, and they'll play their divisional opponent most likely in Kansas City, and that is going to be a fun matchup. It's going to be either way, it's fun. And if you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I think you got to be rooting for the Raiders. You don't want to see Justin Herbert come to town, but we'll talk more about that when we figure it all out. Dan, Super Bowl plane before we wrap this thing up here. So again, if you're new to the show or if you're interested in what my class system is, you have first class. These are teams I would put money that they could win the Super Bowl. But the business class are teams that right now I think could make it to a championship game, but I don't think they could win it. And the standby is a team that, they might win a playoff game, but otherwise I just don't have a ton of faith in them. So first class is the Packers, the Bucks, the Chiefs, the Rams. That's it. In the AFC, the Chiefs, that's it. That's all you got to know. Business class, the Bengals, the Cardinals, the Titans, the Patriots. I think all those teams, you see, that's very AFC heavy. I think all of those teams could make a championship game. Arizona, Kyler Murray, I saw a tweet, is 9-0 in Cowboy Stadium. 2-0 as a pro, 4-0 in high school championship games, and then like 2 big bowl games for Oklahoma or one big bowl game or something like that. But I mean, so I just think Arizona could find a way if the cards break right. They don't have to go to Green Bay. They could get to a championship game. And then the standby, teams, I think they could win a playoff game, but otherwise I don't have much faith in them. The Cowboys, the Bills, the Colts, and the Niners. I don't see those teams. If they make it to a championship game, I'd be a little surprised. certainly if they're playing the Super Bowl, I'd be very surprised. The Cowboys, Bills, Colts, or Niners are.
Yeah, I don't take too much objection to that. I think that's fairly spot on. A lot of those teams that you mentioned on the back end there, it's just they have too many glaring weaknesses.
Agreed.
Especially the Bills, right? That they can't run the ball very effectively, and so there are aspects of all of their games that could be problematic. So I will just say, as we get ready for Monday night, obviously I'm decked out in the Steelers gear. It's going to be an emotional one. Ben's likely last home game at Heinz Field. He's won 91 games there. Hopefully can make it 92.
We'll have to spend some time on Big Ben and his legacy in the offseason, because I think we both have some strong thoughts on that. And especially you, I'd love to hear more about what you're feeling on that. Definitely.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a tough one. Obviously, their hopes of making the playoffs are all but destroyed, barring a Jacksonville, an incredible win by Jacksonville. So I will be the biggest Jaguars fan next week, but they obviously have to win out to make that happen. So hopefully for a good game tonight. But yeah, man, next week we will officially know the playoffs. So I imagine we'll do a good show where we'll kind of look back on our early season predictions, see how they stack up to the playoff picture as we go into the opening round, the wild card weekend. So man, it's crazy. We're already here.
Final thoughts from me. I just want to say good to be back. Shout out to your guy, Adam. I listened to the show last week. You guys did a great job. Fun to get a guy who's in the heart of Texas on the show. A little different, the feel for his, his vibe on football and, the view on football. You're out on the East Coast, but you're more Midwestern guy like me. And I think our philosophies in football are just a little different. He's a Midwest guy too, but you can tell it was fun to hear. So shout out to him. Thanks for filling in.
Yeah.
And a lot of fun shows coming on up. So if you were listening, get ready. Playoffs, here we come.
Yeah, we're going full blast into this thing. So yeah, definitely be sure to like, subscribe, hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. Give us a follow as always. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you back here next week as we get ready for week 1 of the NFL playoffs.